Welcome back to the Beer Junkies. Today we are brewing a German-styled Hefeweizen. The German Hefeweizen is a pale, refreshing wheat beer with a fluffy mouthfeel, distinctive banana and clove flavors, and a very light bitterness. It is highly refreshing. I am a little bit biased. A German Hefeweizen is actually the first craft beer that I ever had, so it does have a special place in my heart. We're going to walk you through the ingredients that we use, the water profile, the malt, the hops, the yeast. Also going to walk you through our process, the mashing, mash out, the sparge, the boil, the whirlpool, knockout, fermentation. In the very end, we're going to walk you through our taste test. Pay particular attention to the mashing profiles and the fermentation. You're probably going to have to make a couple iterations of this beer. It's just one of those that you got to iron some things out. And those are the two areas that you're probably going to have to adjust the most. But without further ado, let's get started. The water profile for our German-styled Hefeweizen is 50 parts per million of calcium, 5 parts per million of sodium, 55 parts per million of sulfate, and 60 parts per million of chloride. To do that, I'm adding calcium chloride, gypsum, and Epsom salt to both the mash water and the strike water. Right now, I have the mash water heating up and filling up to the right temperature and volume. So while that's getting ready, let's go over the grains we're going to be using. The grain bill for our German-styled Hefeweizen is relatively simple, with just 2 or 3 grain additions. I have a starting gravity right around 1046, and to get there, I add 60% of a wheat malt. This will build up that grainy flavor and also add a ton of proteins, which will increase the body and help with foam and head retention later on down the line. To this, I add around 40% of a Pilsner malt for a little bit more of a grainy flavor. If you want to enhance the toastiness and the breadiness, I recommend splitting that with Munich malt at a 20-20 split. Since we're adding so much wheat malt, I do also recommend adding half a pound of rice hulls per 5 gallons. These won't add any flavor, color, or anything else to the beer. It just helps with the mash bed stability, since that wheat malt does not have the husk that the Pilsner malt will have on it. With that, the mash water is ready, so let's mash in. We've got our normal mashing setup, pulling wort from the bottom of the mash tun through the false bottom, pushing it through our wort pump, through the Herms coil, which is maintaining our mash temperature, and it is continuously recirculating to set up our grain bed filter. The mashing profile for our German-styled Hefeweizen is much more intricate than most of the mashing profiles that I use. But it is one of the few instances where I highly recommend doing at least a step mash if you're not able to do the decoction mash, which is how it is traditionally produced. Now, I do still skip that protein rest because I use a well-modified wheat malt, and I don't want to further degrade those proteins and impact my body or foam retention. I do, however, utilize a ferulic acid rest at 113 degrees Fahrenheit or about 45 degrees Celsius. That ferulic acid that we're going to produce is able to be converted into 4-vinyl glycol, or 4-VG, by the POF, or phenolic off flavor producing yeast strains that I'll touch upon later. That 4-VG is what gives us that clove flavor that we want in our German Hefeweizen. The time range for this rest does vary. The longer you go, the more clove you're going to get up to a certain point. But the longer you go, the less of the banana esters you're going to get. So if you want a clove-dominant Hefeweizen, I recommend having about a 25-minute ferulic acid rest. If you want more of the banana esters to come through, I recommend keeping it short at about 10 minutes. If you want a nice mix, start between 15 and 18 minutes and then adjust from there. In addition to this rest, I do a 40-minute rest at 147 degrees Fahrenheit or about 64 Celsius to hit that beta amylase to get a nice conversion. And then I'll raise it to 162 degrees Fahrenheit or about 72 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes to hit that alpha amylase. Finally, from there, I'll raise it to 168 degrees Fahrenheit for that mash out. Right now I've got about 18 minutes left in my final rest. Once I get there, I'm going to mash out, and I'll be back to show you our mash out. We just finished our final rest, so now we are mashing out. This is the same setup we used to raise the temperature between all of the rests. We are pulling wort from the bottom of the mash tun, pushing it through our wort pump through the Herms coil, which is now heating up to raise the temperature of our mash. And we have to go to about 176 to raise this to about 168 degrees. So for each rest, we had to raise this about 8 degrees higher than our mashing temperature, which is slowly rising up to 168 degrees. Once we get to mash out, we will begin to sparge. We just finished mashing out, so now we are sparging, pulling wort from the bottom of the mash tun, pushing it through our wort pump, which is now directed towards the boil kettle, which is heating up as it fills up to reduce the time it takes to get to a boil. At the same time, we are pulling our sparge water from the hot liquor tank, pushing it through our water pump, and rinsing the residual sugars that are left in the grains. The hopping is very simple for the German-styled Hefeweizen. There is very low bitterness and no hop flavor or aroma, so I do a single addition at the 16-minute mark, where I will add between 12 and 14 IBUs of Hallertau Mittelfrüh. You can use any clean bittering hop. I like to keep it traditional and use one of the noble hops, but if you don't have access to one of those, a clean hop like Liberty or Mount Hood will do. We just got to a boil, so we will boil the wort for 90 minutes and add the hops in as needed. At 10 minutes, we will add a yeast nutrient. We just finished the boil, so now we are whirlpooling, pulling wort from the bottom of the boil kettle, pushing it through our pump into the tangential input. This will create a vortex inside of the boil kettle to pull all of the hops and shrub to the center so we do not push them over during knockout. We just finished the whirlpool, so now we are knocking out, pulling wort from the bottom of the boil kettle, pushing it through our pump, through the heat exchanger, which is cooling it down to just below 60 degrees. I'm also injecting my oxygen right there. And we are going all the way down here, pushing out the excess air in the fermenter as we fill it up. For our German-styled Hefeweizen, we use yeast 3068. It is a POF positive strain, so it will produce those phenolic flavors that we want. Now, the pitch rate is widely debated for the German Hefeweizen. A lot of brewers do underpitch, and I do recommend underpitching to a certain extent, but I would caution you against doing crazy underpitching, like 20, 30, even 40% before you iron out the rest of your process. There are so many things you can control, such as the mashing profile, changing that phenolic acid rest, the length of time. You can change the yeast strain, you can change your fermentation temperatures. All those things are much easier to control, especially on a homebrew system. That pitch rate is a little bit harder to guarantee. So once you get everything ironed out, you get your beer tasting close to what you want, then I would start experimenting with a little bit more of the pitch rate. But for that, I pitch about 5 to 10% less, and that seems to help bring out a little bit more of the ester production. So I pitch around 60 degrees Fahrenheit and let that free rise up to 62 degrees for fermentation. I do ferment it on the cooler side. After about a week, or it gets to 4 specific gravity points away from my terminal gravity, which for this beer is about 1010, I will let it free rise up to 72 degrees Fahrenheit for that diacetyl rest. I will hold it there for at least 24 hours, and then I will cold crash it to 33 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll hold it there for another 24 hours, and then I will transfer it to the bright tank. The German Hefeweizen is very highly carbonated, so I would carbonate it to anywhere between 3.2 to 3.5 volumes of CO2. It is well known for its big billowing head, so don't be afraid to get that carbonation a little bit higher. Once it's kegged, it is ready to be enjoyed. All right, this is what I've got. It has a big billowing white head, has that nice haze with a golden color for the smell. Very phenolic. I get a lot of the cloves, but I do get some of that banana in the smell. Maybe a hint of that graininess on the end. For the taste, oh, it follows the nose. It's very soft mouthfeel, but I'm getting a lot of that banana and clove. The bitterness is almost unnoticeable, but I definitely wouldn't call it sickly sweet. It's there to balance that sweetness, but no bitterness. Very refreshing. This is a very good German-style Hefeweizen. We are over the age of 21. We do not condone underage drinking. Please drink responsibly. Oof. Cheers. If you would like to see more brewing content like this, make sure you click that subscribe button right below, and let me know what you'd like to see next in the comments. Cheers.